But the finance minister explained that 11.1 billion Ghana cedis earmarked is to tackle coronavirus. He also some freebies will be given. We are looking at electricity for Lifeline customers and free water for all Ghanaians for the next 6 months. Ben Boache, you had issue with the initial 3 months that was announced by the president, which we all have enjoyed, because you say there are consequences to that. Now we are going to experience this for the rest of the year. What are your...
Thanks for having me, Kojo. I think I also enjoyed the freebies. I got the rebates. Good for everybody, but the reality is that government only give what we have given it, right? And therefore, whatever government spends is either our taxes or loans that have been procured on our behalf. And with our understanding of how the energy sector operates and its challenges, we thought that it was a populist intervention, appeal to people, and not really a pragmatic approach to addressing the challenges that we do have currently. If you look at how burdened ECG is currently, they are not able to generate enough revenue. The inefficiencies still exist. The political interference is still normal and operating to actually save the public that has actually invested in that company. We have failed over a period to retool that institution to make it much more functional. So this intervention is rather going to deepen the woes of ECG.
But it's interesting you say that, because we've had the Energy Minister, Peter Ambewu. Just a minute, Mr. Boache. We've heard from the Energy Minister, John Peter Ambewu, on how much government has set aside for this. In fact, he says that as far as the books of ECG is concerned, government even has enough to take care of its bills for the rest of the year. And we know that government is very much, according to him, is committed to this. So I'm wondering where the challenge is as far as government is concerned.
So maybe let's try to understand how this intervention has been happening. You know, government has committed to power generation, fuel supply, and that comes at a cost. So because ECG is unable to raise enough revenue from the power they sell to consumers, government intermittently has to come in to finance parts of their commitment. So some of the IPPs that have been signed up, the excess capacity we've been talking about, the inefficiencies that have to be offset, government has been coming in to pay, because government is the primary guarantor of the sector. So what government is doing is that when they pay for the inefficiencies that they have failed over the years to really address, then they go to ECG and say, let's net that off and put that into your books. So they continue to keep ECG inefficient. They continue to infiltrate the decision-making of ECG, and they don't want to take the liability that results from that. So if it continues like that, by the end of the year, ECG may be owing government to the tune of over 10 billion cedis, for example, because there is no way ECG is going to be able to pay for the inefficiencies that have accumulated in the energy sector as we speak. So the liabilities are sitting in the books of government currently. They offset it against ECG and becomes a debt on the books of ECG. And that is what is happening. And it's not a sustainable approach to managing the power sector. What we really need to do is to allow ECG to collect the revenue for electricity consumption and let those who can pay. And that's what we have insisted, that even if you have an intervention in this COVID times, you target the most vulnerable, the people who really need it. The way we are implementing this social intervention is regressive. For example, somebody consumes 5,000 cedis worth of electricity, and government is willing to take half of that, but only consumes 30, 20 cedis. Government So what you are saying is that the rich can continue to be richer because government will pay a significant chunk of your luxury lifestyle, of your air conditioning, of your deep freezers. But for the poor, they're only willing to pay for the bulb that they are using and the electricity, the small TV set that they have. And that is quite a regressive intervention to practice, particularly in a situation where we see so much challenges with the electricity sector. So ultimately, it will come back to haunt all of us because if ECG is not able to pay its debt, it comes back to government. Government will have to.
Okay. Just hold the line briefly for me because there's a second bit of this which has to do with the energy sector reform. And when you look at the finance minister's on the revitalization aspect of the program, the very last thing he mentioned there was energy sector reform. We'll come back to talk a bit more about that, but we still have Professor Bokpin on the line. Prof, I don't know if you agree with the position of Ben Boakye that this will ultimately come to haunt us, and I don't know how this will affect generally our debt stock and our finances going forward.
Yes. I think largely I agree with Ben Boakye. I think the interventions that were seen earlier were not efficient. That puts more money in the pocket of the rich who could consume more. That government attempt to undo that to some extent by giving the 6 months or so to lifeline consumers. Perhaps with all the challenge, they are trying to address that. I see they have responded to a large extent to Boakye's concern, because when they did the earlier interventions, I agree with ASAP 100%, but sometimes because of the lack of data, it's very difficult to do the kind of targeting. But I think going forward, we cannot improve on that, because the subsidy the government does ultimately is loaded onto the debt stock, because government can't generate the revenue in another way in order to go and pay for that. And it's not so difficult. Look, my good friend, let me tell you something. Government in managing crisis, there isn't enough innovation across. Let me give you an example. And I'm saying this because Mr. Ben Boakye is an authority in that area. Between 2012 and 2015, when we encountered the energy crisis, you could see the direct demonstrable link between our attempt to resolve the crisis and that. So if you look at the rate of debt accumulation between 2013 and 2014, we added almost 50% of the entire debt stock to the existing between that period. And then if you look at the rate of debt accumulation between 2014 and 2015, it's also that high. Okay, so we loaded, and today I'm sure Ben will tell you the level of inefficiency with the way we try to resolve the energy sector crisis, which is coming to haunt us today. I believe part of that is what Dr. Ben Boakye is talking about. Okay, because we have been largely inefficient, and it comes back to bite us. We are paying today millions of dollars for those excess capacity and all. Where do you find this in any serious country today?
And so, Prof, I'll just want you to give me a straightforward answer to this. Looking at all of the interventions that government has already put in place, announced what it intends to do with a 100 million program, would you say that this intervention of free electricity is unnecessary and that we could have done without it?
Lifeline consumers for a good number of people in our city. If there is alternative way of easing the adverse distributional effect of COVID-19 on them, then I would say that then we can take this out. So if we take this out, what is the alternative in reaching out to them? Because the point is that we have disproportionate effect when it comes to the harmful effect of COVID-19, because the vulnerable, the lower end of society, people with lower skill in less premium jobs are affected more compared to those in the higher end of the ladder. And therefore, when you are doing the intervention, you want to be able to do something that targets those at the lower end. I haven't seen that alternative. And to that extent, we will say that, okay, for lifeline consumers, I think we can accommodate that.
Okay.
ASAP will be able to give us, in terms of the statistics, a lot more on that, because he is an authority in that area. They are able to give us the statistics, lifeline consumers, and then the other consumers who enjoy the 50%. Maybe I haven't read the document well, but I didn't see government modeling the same intervention they did earlier. I saw for lifeline consumers, and maybe for water, maybe for everyone or so. Yeah, but we can check that. Yeah.
Very well. Prof, thank you so much. On NewsDesk, that's Professor Godfred Bokpin. He's an economist and a finance expert as well with the University of Ghana. Let's go back to Zoom and speak to Ben Boakye. Energy sector reforms. We've heard this a million times when it comes to budget presentation, State of the Nation address, anything as far as the energy sector is concerned. Government wants to do a lot more this time with the program. What are your expectations?
I think the reforms keep being announced, but practically not much has been done. In the past couple of years, we've had various commitments to actually reform the sector. You remember what happened with PDS and our inability to actually introduce private sector into power distribution, which ultimately would have ensured that we reformed the electricity sector. The delivery of speeches are becoming more than the actions that ought to be taken, and that's a worry. And I think we just at a point where we can now agree the specific direction that we want to go. And most of these things have to be much more consultative than just writing it and delivering it in the direction that we think that the energy sector ought to go. Because we always see the interventions announced and they don't deliver the kind of retooling that we expect the energy sector to actually be. So I hope this is a more serious approach to really doing that and not the usual rhetoric of reforming the energy sector and nothing gets done.
Thank you very much. Ben Boakye is Executive Director of ASAP, and he joined us with some analysis on the announcement made by government as far as the freebies are concerned, free electricity supply and water for lifeline consumers as far as electricity is concerned and water as well. And so that'll be it. We'll bring you some more on the mid-year budget review in our subsequent bulletins. But this is your election headquarters.